In Baltimore, for our next story, we have activists now who what they want to solve the criminal justice problem. We've talked about a lot of solutions here. I've identified a lot of them. Most of my problems, I think, stem from the culture of police departments and law enforcement in general. We've talked about things like qualified immunity, creating a national standard for police misconduct registries so that we can all get access to things, dealing with the public unions to make sure that they don't continually hide and protect bad officers by moving them around departments or by purging their records, on and on and on. Mandatory body cameras. We've talked about a lot of different things here. But one thing that we have not talked about is paying people to not kill each other. I haven't thought of that, honestly. It never crossed my mind until today, because in Baltimore, there is somebody who is making this proposal. A convicted murderer turned community activist in Baltimore has a radical approach to combating the city's stunning murder rate. Pay criminals not to kill. Can't believe I didn't think of that. The controversial idea comes from Tyree Moorehead, who's 15 when he was put away for second-degree murder and spent 18 years behind bars. I can relate to the shooters, he said, who now transforms scenes of deadly shootings into so-called no-shoot zones. Guess what they want? They want money. Baltimore has been wrecked by violent crime in recent years, closing out 2020 with 335 homicides. In 2019, 348 murders. Similar strategy had been used in Richmond, California, one of the most dangerous cities in the country, when they paid criminals out of Richmond $1,000 a month, as well as provided counseling and job help, NPR reported in 2016. We're going to go through this here in a minute. The suburb of Oakland saw its murder rate cut in half, the station said. Former Baltimore police spokesman T.J. Smith agreed that a creative approach is needed to thwart the violence in the city, but said cash is not the answer. It could make it easier for people to get their hands on guns because they now have an influx of different level of cash, he told Fox 45. And so we're going to get into this. Very interesting proposal. And, my first thought when I read this is like, oh, gosh, are you what? That doesn't make any sense. But once you sort of dial in and see what Richmond did, they kind of have a good argument here, right? It's not something where they're going out there and they're saying anybody who is thinking about murdering somebody or just go here on this website and apply to get your $1,000. It's a little bit more nuanced than that. And they're sort of using this as a microscopic way to go after sort of in the 80-20 rule, right? Where 80% of your results come from 20% of your efforts. Kind of doing that. They're saying maybe if we focus on really just this small percentage, maybe we're going to get some really big results. And so we're going to go into that here. We have the NPR article. This is what the homicide rate looks like in Boston. So all of 2020, 335 reported homicides out of Baltimore. Let me move myself over here. You can see this includes all districts, all zip codes, all genders, all races, and it's a lot. We got a lot going on over there. And so they obviously need to deal with it. We've got this article from NPR. To reduce gun violence, potential offenders offered support and cash. Not long ago, city of Richmond was considered one of the most dangerous cities in America, skyrocketing homicide rates. Today, the city of about 100,000 residents is called a national model for reducing gun violence. Okay. My curiosity has been piqued. We have many cities around the country are adopting their unconventional strategy to prevent violence, which includes paying potential criminals to stay out of trouble. Joseph McCoy cruises around this tough blue-collar town in a small city-owned car, listening for reports of shots fired on the police scanner. He's about 12 neighborhood change agents who keep track, sometimes a couple times a day, of scores of known gun offenders or use at risk of being shot. So sort of really, really focused on gun offenses. Okay, so maybe like this would be a good idea for the police to do rather than going out there and, I don't know, writing tickets. But this guy is a neighborhood change agent. And so he was going around there and trying to find this stuff, and it sounds like it was working out for him. He said, if it's a shooting, we definitely go check out and see what's going on. We try to create a pause in the next shooting. We try to figure out how to keep the next shooting from happening. The agents are city employees and all ex-cons with serious street cred. Ooh, that's interesting, right? Right now, we're doing outreach. There were 2 people that had an altercation yesterday. They're brothers, a fist fight. So now I need to go out here and make sure they're okay. He says he rolled up in a rundown housing project and talked to 3 young men, ages 19 to 23. We do something real simple that folks just don't realize how powerful it is. We love on our youngsters. We come from a sincere place that we love each and every last one of the people we touch. We try to touch as many people as possible. More than just cash for criminals, the street outreach is part of a broader program designed by Devon Bogan, the former director of the city department called the Office of Neighborhood Safety. Bogan was a community activist when he first hired to do something about gun violence in 2007. Richmond at the time had recorded 47 homicides. If you paid attention to media reports and the frequency of media reports about gun violence in Richmond, you would have believed that you were in Beirut, he said. He started the street outreach program in 2008, saw immediate results. There were 40% fewer homicides, but the number of murders climbed again in 2009. Then he made a discovery after he met with local law enforcement. What I continued to hear was folks believed that there were 17 people responsible for 70% of the firearm activity in our city. 17 people. We can do something about that, he says. Right? And that sort of comports with that 80-20 rule, right? So take a look at that. We have, this article goes on. His team launched Operation Peacemaker Fellowship. They identified those 17 people and several more. They made him an offer. We're going to give you counseling, social services, a job, a chance to travel if they develop a, quote, life map and agree to stay in contact every day and stay out of trouble. Then the fellowship will pay them up to $1,000 a month for 9 months. The result, Richmond has seen its murder rate cut in half since the fellowship began. Bogan says street patrols are paid by the city, while the cash stipends come from private donors. Private donors. He chuckles when he says the media reports have called his program Cash for Criminals. If you believe that simply paying someone a stipend will reduce gun crimes in the cities where gun crimes are long and loud, you're wrong. We've done something much, much more comprehensive than that. Replicating the model elsewhere. They're borrowing from similar models in Boston and Chicago. The difference in Richmond is a tight focus and targeted group and the cash payments. The approach is attracting interest from across the country. D.C. is adopting a similar program, while Oakland and Toledo are among other cities considering the Richmond model. They always ask me, is it going to work and how much is it going to cost? Said Angela Wolf, a researcher. If you have city leaders that aren't willing to think outside the box and try something different, this is going to be a harder program. That's especially true if there's not immediate results. Then there's the question of dealing with the local police. The ONS approach, while pretty unorthodox when it started, but now he knows that neighborhood change agents, quote, don't cooperate or share information with his officers. But he says while the ONS approach is different, they share a common goal. Here's the thing. We recognize the problem is bigger that we can deal with. And, arresting and incarcerating people isn't going to solve the problem. I mean, it just isn't. So you can see, right? I mean, this is an alternative proposal. And those donations are coming from private parties. And you have people who've been through it, who've been through the justice system, who can go out and engage with these people. And it sounds like it's working. I don't think it's necessarily a bad idea. Now, I'm not in the mindset that the public should fund prospective criminals with our tax dollars, right? That doesn't sound like a good policy to me. Somebody who doesn't want the government to confiscate income from individuals and then redistribute it elsewhere. But something like this that does involve private donors and on the ground boots in engagement, I think is a very nice model. And if you're sort of rolling your eyes at the idea, there is a framework for this stuff already in the country. It's called Alcoholics Anonymous, right? You've got this very organic group of individuals around this country that basically fund themselves. One of the most, I would say, decentralized organizations in the world that is a global institution that follows the same set of principles, values, and protocols. And it helps a lot of people go from a very dark part of their lives, a dark point in their world, to something much better. A lot of people. I'm a big fan of the program. And, stuff like this, I think, is worth talking about. The original idea, I think the initial thought, the initial sort of gut reaction here is to say, we're not going to pay them this money. This is socialism, or this is something that is egregious. But it's sort of not that, right? It's not saying we're going to bribe you to not go out there and kill people. It's saying, listen, we need you to build a life map. We need a set of instructions from you. How are we going to change your life? You don't have to figure it all out on your own. I'm going to show you how to do it. I'm going to mentor you. I'm going to sponsor you as we get you out of this low point in your life into a better part in your life. And if you can say, yeah, we're gonna be able to support you with some financial funding for a certain period of time so that you have a place to live, so that you can get back in school. We're going to buy you the basic stuff. As long as you're comporting with the program, then we'll be able to help you with that. We'll be able to fund that for you. That's a cause I could get behind, honestly. That's a charitable cause that I think that would be a good use of money from private donors, not necessarily from the government or from other citizens. But I like the idea that we're talking about this model. I like the idea that it's very hyper-focused, identifying the most problematic areas and not doing this broad dragnet law enforcement style that we have right now, where they just go out and write traffic tickets and they're looking for a mom that has something illegal in her car, and boom, then she's that becomes the crime of the century. All right, like I get that, but maybe let's focus on some of this more targeted, approach where we're actually trying to change behavior and rehabilitate people rather than just going and rounding everybody up and throwing them in prison. I've said this many times. You can't punish the pain out of people. You can't, I was having a conversation with my business partner earlier this week about prisons. It's like, do prisons deter crime? Because we keep filling them up. People keep breaking the law. You would think that if the fear of the penalty was so serious or such a strong deterrent, that people would just not commit any crimes anymore because they know they're going to go to prison for a long period of time. But it happens all the time. Somebody will have an open criminal case and they get another charge. Well, why is that? It's not because they're concerned about the deterrence. They're concerned, they have a problem. They have a physical addiction problem. Or they're living in a lifestyle in an environment that is not conducive to changing your life away from criminality. So, very interesting. I would like to continue to learn more about this and see how some of these results do play out. Let's jump into some questions. We got Cody Bear says, wouldn't that just make more people say I'm going to kill people just to get the money and the benefits? Yeah, so I think that's a fair critique there, Cody Bear 1. I do think that, you might... I think that probably is sort of an initial reaction, but I think it's not one of those procedures where you just go on to the irs.gov website and submit a form and get your stimulus refund, your non-murder refund. Hey, congratulations, you didn't kill anybody this month. Here's $1,000. It's more, I think, of that's sort of the spicy headline of the story, but I think it's not just about the money. It's about will help support you if you're making a concrete life change. And so that's where I think the real value comes in. It's not about the money. We have Hack Consulting says, why is it so hard for people to come into our country, illegally or not, just not commit crimes? Well, why is it so hard for people to come into our country, illegally or not, and just not commit crimes? So I don't know. I don't know what the numbers are on that, right? I don't know how many people who do come across the border actually are committing crimes. I mean, some people make the argument that just by crossing the border alone, that is a violation of federal law. That in and of itself is a crime. I understand that argument, but I think what we're talking about truly is, once they're in the border, are these people committing, massive amounts of crimes? And I just, I haven't personally seen that. I just haven't seen that in my practice. We represent a lot of people, thousands of people. And so I just haven't seen sort of that, that pattern personally. I don't know what the data says. Do undocumented migrants, do illegal immigrants, whatever you want to, whatever label you want to use, when they come across the border, do they genuinely commit crimes at a higher rate than regular citizens? I don't know. I haven't seen any data on that, but I don't know. We have Cattle Caregiver, says there are parents who bribe their kids to be, quote, good by offering them candy, allowance, electronic devices, etc. And there are parents that teach their kids the reasons to do what's right and the consequences of doing what's wrong. I wonder which kid grows up to be more self-functioning adults in society. Yes. Yeah. And so I think you're drawing a distinction there, right? Between the parents who do bribe their kids by giving them good things. And then there are parents who will sort of teach people about the more underlying foundational reasons for doing what's right and what's wrong, right? So in other words, one's a little bit more deep-seated. One's sort of ingrained into the personality. The other's a bribe, essentially. And so I think you actually draw a good point here, right? If it is more towards, if this type of plan is more towards the idea where you're building a relationship and you're creating some institutional sort of internalized values for that person, that is beneficial. Whereas just throwing money at a problem is not. And so you can't, I don't think that you would see any benefit at all just throwing people $1,000. That's going to probably be used for guns, drugs, alcohol, whatever, right? Because that's the environment. But if you can say, nope, I'm going to mentor you, sponsor you, we're going to get you out of this lifestyle. I know you can't afford it. That's okay. We've got some private funding that we can put you up at this place. We can give you a stipend as long as it's going to X, Y, and Z. I kind of like the idea of that. We have Sharon Quidney says that plan seems to be addressing the underlying reasons why people go into these violent modes. Sounds like a cockeyed idea, but if it works, hey, that's a good thing. Yeah, and Sharon says, it sounds to me like a constructive alternative to the conventional approach of arresting and jailing people. Prisons don't stop crime. They make it worse because the person gets solidified into a life of crime. Yeah. So I agree with you, right? I mean, as I say this often, you can't punish the pain out of people, right? If somebody grew up in that environment, that's all they know. And you can just say that person is a lost soul, which is a very depressing thought in my mind, right? I mean, I think that we should not treat anybody like that. One alternative, throw them in prison, lock them up forever. They're going to get out, do it again, lock them up again until they do it 3 times. We got a 3 strikes rule. Boom, they're gone forever. That's one method. I think it's an awful method, inhumane, doesn't serve society, wastes a ton of resources, wastes a human life, and it's not good. Maybe this is a better alternative. And what if it's actually more effective, right? That's what it comes down to. What if instead of having roving bands of traffic cops just sort of swarming the cities, stopping people crossing the street and all this stuff, we just say, all right, well, let's get a little bit more targeted. Let's get a little bit more focused on the areas that really need our attention in criminal law and see if that helps. And if it does, do more of that. We have Ma Fox says, no, prison doesn't deter crime when the actual penalty is lifelong. Never-ending stigma from the American public. 2 years in prison is nothing compared to 20 years of not finding work outside of Walmart. Yeah. So I think Ma's talking about sort of this perpetual penalty, this never-ending punishment that we have here in the United States. You're a felon. You're designated a felon. It's, unless you kind of go through a formal legal process, you're going to permanently be a felon. You got to go and restore your rights and sort of claw back some of your dignity from the courts. Even though you've done your time, let's say you're in a horrible accident, somebody gets injured, you're charged with a aggravated assault with a vehicle type of crime. You go to prison for 2.5 years. All right, you come back out. You paid your penalty. You did your probation. You took your 2.5 years out of jail. In my mind, that debt is paid. Okay, put them on probation for a little bit to make sure that they can acclimate back into society. If you want to, fine. But that's that. But unfortunately, in this country, every time you apply for a job, a place to live, every time you want to go do anything, apply for a federal benefit, go get a loan somewhere, you're a felon. And you are persona non grata. You do not matter. You've basically been branded with a scarlet letter for the rest of your life. And that's not right because they've already paid their debt. We have Jeremy Matrita says, to me, this is along the lines of give someone a fish and they eat for a day, teach them how to fish and they eat for a lifetime. Exactly right, Jeremy. Love that. Yeah, exactly right. Sponsor somebody up, bring them up, right? And using these ex-cons who are probably excellent at this work to build up a little bit of a community. I would support that cause. Absolutely. So we'll see where it goes. Kind of a little bit of a different story, right? A different solution, one that I had not thought of. And I like that idea. Not because it's $1,000. That's the headline. That's what gets everybody riled up. Oh, what? We're going to pay criminals? No. That's just to get everybody's blood boiling at the start of the segment. But then we get into it and it kind of makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? I apologize. Thanks for letting me have fun with that.